The opposite of a duck's boner. The opposite of a duck's boner.
Okay, so the first thing that was kind of bugging me yesterday, the difference between a thing and the illusion of a thing. Particularly in reference to like the Turing test, or free will, or encounters with God, unlike drugs, or whatever happens. What's the difference between the real thing and an uninterpretable illusion of the thing, or an what's the word, like you can't tell them apart, it's unrecognizable, or not, whatever, you know what I mean. They're unteleportable from the real thing. It's a foolproof illusion. What's the difference? And the only answer is really just the fact of the matter, whether it truly is or truly isn't, which ultimately we can't know.
Ultimately, like in terms of like day-to-day existence, what like the mutually agreed upon truth is what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone gets into a car wreck,
and obviously there's evidence for that, so it's easier to tell.
Like the blame goes to whoever broke the law, like
right,
and whoever mutually agreed upon, or whoever
more witness,
whoever more people, or whichever side has more people. They
that's interesting too. Whichever side has more people, more votes, basically, to back it. And in ancient cases when they couldn't make up who was right, they just, one side of the debate would go to war with the other side of the debate, and they would just swing weapons until no one else could contest their ideas.
Or they also had tests where, like, we'll throw you in the water. If you're guilty, you'll drown.
If you're guilty, you'll drown.
If
you're innocent, you'll drown. If you're guilty, you'll come back up to the surface. Like, I hate those fucking witch trial tests. I mean, honestly, those are a really great example of just how fucking naive it was, or how naive we were as a people, as society was back in the day. We like to think about how rational we are today, but really we're just a stone's throw from those days. And the initial question, I guess, kind of stems from specifically instances on like psychedelics where people are like, oh, I met God. Like, I totally encountered God. I don't know what you think it is, but I'm certain from my experience and memory that I encountered God. And somebody else is like, no, dude, it's just an illusion. It's all in your head. You didn't actually meet God. But I think, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Who gives a shit? What's the difference? If you have a psychedelic experience where you... Nadim, get the fuck off my computer, bro. You're gonna fuck something up. But,
where's the...
You gotta, scroll further. Down. Right there. You're in it. Yeah, the dashes. Double dashes.
So you had, what's the difference between a thing and the illusion of a thing?
Yeah, the Turing test. Which the Turing test, I think I should also point out, is the test you would give an artificial intelligence in order to determine whether or not it was, quote, conscious. Now, that runs into a lot of problems straight off the bat. You have to isolate your definition of the word consciousness to a T without any room for interpretation. And then it's like, have you seen the movie Ex Machina? I told you to watch it. Did you watch it?
No.
I didn't list it as a prerequisite
I did really want to watch it.
It's such a good movie. Such a good movie.
I know there was an anime of it, I think, at one point.
Was it really?
I think so. Or like
that sounds interesting, and it wouldn't surprise me. The movie is just really well thought out, and it brings an interesting fucking question to mind. I'm not gonna spoil it, I think I've already spoiled it to you, but I won't spoil it for whoever potentially listens to this because it's such a
The analysis of an itch. The difference between pain and pleasure. The line is more blurry than we think.
Okay. That's interesting.
Okay, so have you been to the Hall of Illusions display exhibit at Nelson Atkins, I think? No, Union Station. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I do, actually, and I don't think I've been there either.
Okay,
Well,
so
obviously I haven't been there if I don't know what you're talking about.
So there is a display there, and it is a series of metal plates. There's like metal plate, metal plate, metal plate, metal plate. There's an even number of them.
Okay.
And you touch one, and it's really warm. And then you touch the next one, and it's cold. And then you touch the next one, and it's warm. The next one's cold. If you lay your hands across it, it feels like it's burning you. Because the mixture of the cold and the hot
is so weird to your senses.
And then they actually analyzed your brain, and whenever you feel burnt, whenever you feel like your skin is being burned, you feel cold and hot signals at the same time. That's how your brain signals to you that you're burning.
That's interesting to note. Because it's always... Have you ever, like, when you were a kid, you thought you could, keep throwing snowballs, even though you only had, like, really thin little gloves, and you're like, I'll be fine, I can keep throwing snowballs. And you will... I meant to just scoop him up, but he... No visible damage, sorry about that.
That's okay.
You're such a goober. What was I talking about? Snowballs.
Snowballs, your hands get cold.
Yeah, when your hands get to a certain point, you feel the sensation of, like, burning. It feels like it's burning. And oh my god, my mom used to do this thing when I would complain.
We grabbed that back.
When I would complain, like, hey mom, I've been outside for a while, my hands feel, like, super fucking cold. And I'd be like, it hurts. She'd be like, come here, come here. She would pull some, like, lukewarm, like, not boiling, not even, like, where you let the hot water on the faucet run to the point where it's, like, hot to the touch and steam's coming out of your sink. Not even that hot. Like, barely warm. But from ice cold to barely warm, it feels like boiling hot lava. I remember my mom would be like, you can't pull your hands out, you gotta just let them go in there, because I promise you it's not that hot, it just feels hot. And I put my hands in and I was like, ah! And I'm like, I was freaking out because it felt so intense, but after a while I was like, okay. You can rationalize your way out of it. You kind of have to overcome that hurdle consciously, because if you let your unconscious mind do all the work, it'll tell you your hands are on fire and that you need to pull them out. It's kind of like doing a front flip. Like, your brain doesn't want you to do the work on your own, but you have to kind of, like, click, yes, I would like to manual override. Like, you have to, and then it, like, asks you, like, are you sure? It's like, yes, stop asking. You have to kind of, you have to intentionally include that manual override, and it gets easier with over time, because I've been trying to learn how to do a flip, and let me tell you, it's not easy. The first time you try to do a backflip, your brain will give dial tone. I can speak from experience. I landed on my neck because, like, I went to do a backflip, and my brain just error. Like, as soon as you 180 degrees, your brain's just like, no, this is not supposed to be happening. You just get all kinds of fucked up mentally. Mango is being a cutie. Bing, 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 bing. Hey, scratch on Nadim for a little while and let Griffin smell your hands. I think it makes him feel like he gets an advantage in the situation. Like, oh, I'm gathering data about the enemy, and they are not gathering data about me. So it makes him feel a little more comfortable. I let him smell mango off my hands. I think it helped him calm down a little bit. Because he can, like, introduce himself to them without them having to be introduced to him. Mm-hmm. So, or I guess rather the other way around. Hey,
so
Curvy, quit your yelling.
I remember Alan Watts in one of his lectures, continuing on the subject. Mm-hmm. He was talking about sadism and masochism, and how like, for a variety of reasons, someone might mistake their own pain for sexual pleasure, and that is masochism. And then someone might mistake someone else's pain for their own sexual pleasure, which is sadism.
Do the terms sadism and masochism specifically refer to sexual environments?
That's the way he used them, but I think
they certainly have their applicability.
Subconsciously, I think what he was implying is that even sadistic people who don't realize that it is innately sexual, because he was alive during the Freudian, or like directly after, like when, Freud was being studied in like psychology college courses.
Freud wasn't that long ago, all things considered, and Jung was kind of his protege, and so even I feel like Alan Watts and Carl Jung were probably
they had spoken, they had hung out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I would have loved to hear them talk. I would have absolutely loved to hear the exchange between those. I don't
think they liked each other a whole lot. Like, they didn't not get along. They could talk professionally, but
right. But they weren't they didn't click.
Yeah.
What a shame. What a lost opportunity. But what you were saying about how people would mistake those sensations for something else. It reminded me of how this may or may not be actually related, but Sam Harris talks about the conceptual frame behind, quote, fear/anxiety. And so, like, when you are getting chased by a bear, you get a spike of adrenaline, your amygdala is firing, saying, hey man, something's up, you need to be on your toes. It just keeps flushing the system with adrenaline, and that becomes interpreted as fear because of the conceptual frame. You're saying, my life's in danger, I need to run away from this bear. There you go. You have all the necessary ingredients for what is called fear. But when you step on a roller coaster, and that roller coaster starts to go down, your brain starts firing, saying, hey. Your amygdala is firing, saying, hey man, something's up. Your life might be in danger. You need to be all around it, but you need to be aware of the situation. But you can still do that manual override that I was talking about, and you can say, hey, wait, it's okay. It's just a theme park ride. And so your brain goes, oh, not in danger? Oh, cool. We can just you can just ride out this adrenaline high, and enjoy it as thrill instead of fear. Same thing with getting on stage. People have that kind of trigger in their mind and say, oh fuck, like everyone's looking at me. Holy shit, I don't want to be the center of attention. That's typically, I think, maybe this is where it comes from, and I could be wrong. Welcome to talk about it, but like, if you get on stage, or back throughout our evolutionary history, if you were to be singled out, it was more than likely that predators would come after you. Like, if someone got singled out from the pack and separated and isolated and kind of pointed out, like if you had a pack of zebras, or they herd, they're a herd, whatever, and you just wrap one in Christmas lights, I feel like I'd like to do this experiment, see which one the cheetahs kill first. See if it's the Christmas lights fucker. But your brain, when you get on stage, tells you, oh god, there's something happening here, your amygdala's firing, your palms are fucking lubricating themselves for whatever reason, and you are freaking out, and your brain interprets that as fear and anxiety. But if you take the time to manual override and say, hey, it's fine, my life's not in danger, it's okay, then you can kind of step back and be like, oh, okay, it's thrilling to be on stage. I've kind of gotten a little bit of that with the whole stand-up comedy thing. Honestly, it's really fucking fun. And like, if you can just come up with like 3 super shitty jokes. No, they don't even have to be good. Like, super shitty jokes. And just take them on stage. And you don't have to try to do a character or anything. Some people like to do that, go into the effort of doing a character. But it's like, that 5 minutes that you're on stage and just trying your damnedest not to give a fuck about what they think. You're just doing the jokes for the sake of it. The less fuck you can give, the more people will respect you. I've learned. That's kind of inherently the concept of being cool. Like, we know he's like, oh man, that guy's cool. It's because he doesn't care about you. That's exactly why you think he's cool. it's like, yeah, you get on stage and you're like, fuck you guys, I'm not here for you, I'm here for me. Hey, dude, chill the flip out.
That brings to mind a. Do you remember the show Explained? The Mind Explained?
Oh, dude, I love that show.
So the meditation.
I have not
episode,
actually finished all of Mind.
The meditation one that I've watched that like 5 times. But they have a monk come in, or like they have like several monks come in and they do this test. And there's basically like a candle or like a small flame, and they have normal people who don't meditate on a regular basis.
There's nothing over there, dude. Normal people who don't meditate on a regular basis.
Just like regular run-of-the-mill, everyday people. And then monks who live in a monastery.
And they're meditating like half their waking life.
Yeah. So they have the normal people hooked up to like EKG monitors and like, you know, like
I'm listening, yeah.
Stuff to measure their heart rate and their like, I don't know, neuro activity.
EKG,
I think
electrocardiograph. I think that's the boop, boop, boop with your heartbeat.
And I think it might be something.
MRI or not. There's also skin conductivity and brainwave.
I think it's the brainwave activity.
You just put like 2 things in your temples.
2 electrodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They
I'm
didn't
not
actually
sure what that's called.
They didn't show the experiment, but they shared the results, and basically like both people were told they were about to put their hand on a candle, and the people who didn't meditate often, they would have like a really low brain activity, and then they would put their hand on it, and the pain would make their brain light up. And it would like spike and then go. And so there's like baseline with the fear, and then hike, and then the people who meditated, the monks, they would have a similar. Maybe I should do it from this way. They would have a similar like baseline, and then they would get ready and start like actually meditating, and their brain activity would raise above the baseline, and then whenever they put their hand on the candle, it didn't jump as much. It just went up and then back down.
That's
and
interesting.
Then it returned to the meditating baseline, and then back down to the.
And that's kind of interesting. So they would kind of they would in a sense like insulate their mind by like already taking themselves to the state of their hand being on the candle, so that when they actually did it, they were kind of already meeting it there, rather than letting the experience take them to that moment. In that instance, they were kind of prepared, especially with getting on stage. And I'm not even the most experienced with that, so I'll try to use another analogy. When you're like, like when you're gonna take your driver's test for the first time, the best way to do that is to drive more often, and so that when you get behind the wheel, there's not as big of a spike in change. It's just going from the level of experience that you've already accrued to just right there. Like it's not like, you know, it's not devastating in any way. Like the length of that spike is maybe only half the distance if you're more practiced. Does that analogy check?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Still so good. I can't decide which I like more. A taste of just like latte or like black coffee, because I fucking love black coffee. And that's kind of interestingly enough, it kind of lines up with what we were talking about. So I used to have to, well, no, have to is a strong word, but like I used to always sweeten my coffee and also creamer it all the time. And it was just like, I prefer it that way. That's just the way I'm always going to do it. If once I started working at Starbucks, there would be moments where, oh my god, and like this was the fucking most pretentious thing. Like in retrospect, I'm still scoffing at it. But the manager would pull us all aside, and she'd be like, I poured everyone a sample of our new dark roast, and I've paired it with a dark chocolate scone, because I think the pairing goes nicely. And what you're going to do is you're going to...
Are you calling me out right now?
You're gonna sip it. You're gonna sip it slowly and just kind of cover the front half of your tongue, and let the flavors really settle in. And then you're gonna take a bite of this scone, and oh my fucking god, just give me the coffee so I can shoot it and let's go, and I'll be out of here.
In the later episode, we're going to go through the methods of tasting coffee. Apparently, that has to be a thing now.
So what happens is. I was before I started doing that. Once we got into that, and I was like, fine, I'll put on the tinfoil hat with everybody else. So I would get the coffee, and I would taste it how they wanted me to. Honestly, from that experience, I've come to appreciate black coffee more, and I started to realize, before then, I would drink black coffee and be like, yeah, I can choke it down, but it's and kind of to mask the flavor of the coffee in whatever way I can possibly muster, typically with just shit tons of heavy cream. But after that, I'm after forcing my brain through the whole choking it down experience, I kind of became desensitized, and I was like, I can start appreciating it for the flavors that it actually has, rather than trying to always be, so against the grain, so to speak, with it. So does that help your feelings about my comment a little bit?
A little bit. I feel the same way about celery and other vegetables that don't have a very strong, delicious flavor, but they do have a
flavor,
appreciable quality in the flavor, and so I would. Honestly, I wouldn't
even go as far as to say specifically an appreciable quality, because, we can appreciate from, 100 million light years away, the death of a star, but that doesn't mean we'd really like it to happen to us. And so, the definition of what is appreciable kind of, I guess, it loses its meaning when you go from saying, I'm drinking black coffee before I worked at Starbucks, not appreciating it. I'm drinking black coffee after I've worked at Starbucks, and I'm appreciating it. The appreciable quality was always there, but it was just kind of a flavor that I'd never really learned to take into consideration.
Well, that's what I'm saying with the celery.
Yes.
Celery by itself, if you've never had celery before, or you've very sparsely eaten celery, and then you put it in chicken noodle soup, fucking delicious. Chop some celery up and put it in your ramen,
You want to talk? You can't even
delicious. I can't eat packaged ramen, but I can make ramen.
Yeah, you just need rice noodles. Mm-hmm. So wait, that angel hair that we had the other day, those rice noodles, I assume? Dude, rice... So this whole keto thing, and let me start by prefacing that I have not read the books. But it seems to me the vast majority of the carbohydrate quality that we have access to in this country, it is mainly two things. One of which is sugar. Sugar is fucking in everything. And the second one is refined wheat flour. And I'm not sure what refined means, but I know it's an extra process that makes it worse for you. Or something to that effect. It's
essentially synthesis, except you're not getting...
Or do they bleach it, or they run through chemical processes to remove color, or remove other chemicals, or remove whatever. It's a process that's not good for you.
A lot of products these days have unbleached flour. That's a thing that's...
Well, fucking good for them. We finally took the rat poison out of your food. you should be thanking us. Wow, let's bow down. I'm cynical sometimes.
Honestly, I remember when I was a kid, I was just thinking, whenever I would cook something, I would be like, you know what I could do to make this more, nutritionally engaging and also increase the mass of the food that I'm eating, I could just stir flour into this. I could just stir wheat flour into this.
Yeah.
And now that I can't eat flour,
you're having to find other ways to fluff.
Well, no, I never really actually tried it. I just thought about it if I had a big company, I could water everything I make down with wheat.
And it's so cheap.
And yeah, it's a couple bucks a bag.
Okay, so wait, but to kind of derail my train of thought that I started to talk about, sugar and refined wheat flour make up the vast majority of the carbohydrate base that we have access to in this country. No matter what you're eating, it's most likely based in one of those two carbohydrate bases. Wheat and gluten are awful for you. They are really awful for you if you ever look into the science. Let me also say, I can't remember the fucking facts, but I know that I've watched videos about it, and I know that I have a right to feel indignant. But wheat is so fucking bad for you. They did studies where they took, the diets of people in the far west and the far east. In the far west, we eat mostly wheat for our breads. In the far east, they eat mostly rice for their breads.
For
carbohydrates, right, in general. And what they found was that we in the West have a monumentally greater obesity rate, which is surprise. But we are really fucking bad about it. We have awful obesity rates. But they don't have anything like that in China or in the Far East where they eat mostly rice. And they've linked it
is introduced to their society.
Right. And even then, most of the shit they have, they looked at gas station foods. Just random ass shit. Most of it's based in rice. I think they looked at Japan specifically for the video that I watched. But still, the difference between rice and wheat. It's very drastic.
I think you also have to take into account how we treat it, because here you go to a gas station, you can get Twinkies, Ho-Hos, sugar babies.
Those rice flour. Is that the bomb you're about to drop on me right now?
No, those are all wheat. But
I was shit, I didn't do my homework.
Like mochi, for example. Mochi isn't healthy. It's
what is mochi again?
Let me go look at the nutrition facts real quick.
Bitch, you got some mochi right now. Just bring it. Just bring it here. I can't. Wait, don't. It's balls. I want to say the word balls comes after the word mochi. Is mochi balls? Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh shit! Yeah, you had me eat this.
I had you eat the more powdered ones. These are coconut.
Oh, that sounds way better.
Okay, but this is a dessert item. This is
certainly. Yeah, let's get those nutrition facts out.
It does have hella carbohydrates. It's 27 grams. But
yeah. Okay,
that's all rice.
Let me finish what I was talking. Just re-rail my train of thought for the third time now. On the whole keto fad diet thing, I think that we should be reducing carbohydrates in general from our diet. But what's I think more important than just total reduction is what types of carbohydrates are you eating? Are you eating sugar and wheat?
Whole foods.
Or are you eating rice? And because there's lots of good carbohydrates, and your body needs them. It's one of the essential nutrients that you need. And also the food pyramid they're starting to learn is kind of shitty. It's kind of outdated. It's kind of not really working. But that's it. I think just instead of watching just carbohydrates in general, we need to be more specific.
Personally, my dietary plans, I don't say I need to eat this many grams of carbs in this meal, and I need to eat this much vegetables and this and this and this.
I don't know what you do, but I'll tell what I do.
I change it up on a day-to-day basis. So the other night we had steak, mushrooms, mashed potatoes, and broccoli, and most American meal we've ever made in my house.
Yeah, you said you eat a lot of quinoa and rice and veggies.
And so that was one that's a grainless meal. There's no grains in that. There's one vegetable that is genuinely nutritious, and the other is just starch.
Yeah.
But then like a few nights before we had made curry, and a few nights before we made like
is
rice.
curry a plant? Is curry a spice plant?
No, curry's it's like
type of
tomato paste, coconut milk, and spices.
Gotcha. Okay. Curry's interesting. Honestly, so ever since I started realizing that I eat like garbage, I eat garbage is what I'm saying. I started to kind of been like, I looked up some TED Talks, trying to stay #woke about the whole thing. Also, wait, real quick, the very first ingredient is sword bean paste. Sword, like weapon. Sword bean paste.
This is a dessert, and the first ingredient is not flour. It's not
sword bean paste. I just want to know what a sword bean is. That's really the point.
We'll set that on the coffee table.
Of course I will. But I've just started to so I didn't ever used to make a conscious effort to include anything in my diet. I would just eat what was convenient, eat what was provided, and occasionally before I'd go to bed, I'd be like, fuck, I don't want to make myself anything, so I'll just drink 12 ounces of milk, call it good, go to bed. It's not great. It's not great for you.
That's what happened with V8.
The V8? Honestly, dude, fuck, that's nutrients. That's something. But I would just try to make sure that I had enough calories to digest throughout the day. I didn't give a shit what they were or what they looked like. Well, I started to try to consciously reduce the amount of flour that I eat and consciously increase meat and veggies. And not processed meat. Like, fuck fast food. I haven't actually had a fast food cheeseburger or... actually, no. Okay, well, I take that back. I've eaten Backyard Burger. And only because they're fucking amazing. They're so fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
And their burgers are way better than filler. The filler that you get at McDonald's.
And there's
I've not...
Tomato, lettuce, onion.
Blue cheese.
Dude.
I'm a sucker for blue cheese. But like...
Battery's running low.
Sweet Jesus.
Do you want to plug it in real quick?
What are we talking about? Diet.
One thing I think that I learned from in school, I don't think this was during health class. I think it was during like ancient history or we were talking about the evolution of humans, and they showed us a video which gave a really good visual as to how humans ate and like how humans started developing food, and it was kind of based on how they cooked in third world countries now. And then just taken like a few centuries back. But there is like nomadic peoples had discovered like basic cooking methods like fire. Oh yeah. And instead of like tracking down and like I don't know what early humans tracked down in the Satanism in Africa.
They tracked down apples and potatoes.
When they tracked an apple for 46 miles
after hitting it with 3 arrows and bleeding it dry,
following its tracks, like they would like that was a lot of energy for a very small amount of gain, and so they realized that they could eat the grains that were growing around them. Like
agriculture was
agriculture.
I think refers to the cultivation of food in animals and plant.
This is before
domestication.
This was before agriculture, but after like between the hunter gatherer and the agricultural phases, they would basically like move around, and agriculture was kind of discovered after they decided, hey, we're gonna bury this food because we have so much food right now. We're gonna bury this here. And then when we come back to it, then we can use this for food, like whenever the weather cools down or whatever. And so they would bury all the wheat and like or whatever grains grew there, and then they would travel off, and then they would come back, and more food would have grown from where they buried.
Oh yeah, I think I remember this. And then they were like, "Holy shit!" Little dirtbag, he's looking up at me. Which. This is something I've always been kind of perplexed by. Specifically, omnivorous or herbivorous animals that can't use language. So basically only excluding humans. But how they knew and know what things are okay and what things are not okay to eat. Dude, you can stop that. You can stop that.
Such a little pouty boy.
He's very pouty. Oh, dude, give it. Give it here.
Just kiss his face against the wall.
Can you stop? Yeah.
He doesn't like when you lay your head on him. He gets more growly.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah. How they knew what to and not to eat. It's always perplexed me because like not everything can be determined just through smell and taste alone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it can. When you pick up something, anything, to eat some grass, your brain goes, no, I'm okay, I'm good on that. Says, how about not? You eat some plastic, even more that feeling. But, like, if you were to eat, like, specific herbs, now this would have been probably pretty easy to tell, like, if one member of your tribe was like, hey guys, I brought back a bunch of this fucking stuff, and then he ate some and died.
I ate a bunch along the way.
I know, yeah. So then like, they'd be like, oh shit, stay the fuck away from that. And then, you know, I mean, I guess that it's not entirely unseeable as to see how, like, they could have managed, but it's just been interesting, like, how they would pass those things down without language. Like, how do tribes of apes, troops, I think is the proper term, troops of apes would communicate to others about how, like, what things were good and what things were not good. And also, Go ahead.
Okay. So Terrence McKenna, when he's discussing the like evolutionary processes that went into basically humans finding mushrooms and then expanding their consciousness based on like
The stone ape theory.
their increased
Visual acuity.
increased visual acuity, increased sexual drive, which caused like huge orgies and like
One can only dream.
then the feeling of oneness that made them
That
so-
must have been
because
crazy.
he often says the ego was necessary to know which mouth to put food into.
right. Oh yeah, and that's a
and
common.
Another thing that he brings up that I think kind of ties into the development of intelligence is he says that carnivores were the first to or not necessarily the first, but they were the more advanced because like a cow just walks around and grazes.
They just fucking continue. Like
buffalo,
slugs on the inside or snails on the inside of a fish tank. They just don't stop moving, eating.
Buffalo have like little tribes, and like they will move around and protect each other and protect themselves.
Although buffalo, I've heard, I could be wrong about this, but I've heard buffalo were fucking just brick stupid. Like when Indians would hunt buffalo, they'd be shooting arrows at like one, and then the other one right next to it grazing on grass would just look over, not give a fuck, and just go back to grazing. And then they'd be like, fuck, and they just keep shooting them.
I'm thinking African buffalo.
Okay, yeah.
They're a lot more lean.
Also, yeah, bison and buffalo were not the same thing.
Yes.
We have bison in America,
okay.
or had bison. But
so basically, like they had anxiety. They had the ability to be like, oh shit, like
something's going on.
Something could happen, so we're going to be on edge right now.
Yeah.
And
which is, I feel like, an absolutely necessary evolutionary tool.
And then also on the other side, the carnivores like lions and
Predators.
just predators in general.
Mm-hmm.
They had to develop a more broadened intelligence to where they could put themselves in the prey's shoes to guess what they're going to do.
Yeah, I remember this.
And so us as apes being the we were insectivores and fruitivores. We ate fruit from trees.
Fruitivore. Yeah.
We didn't really eat vegetables because those were on the ground, and the ground was kind of dangerous.
Ground's kind of
But
dangerous.
then minor bits of global warming started happening. Trees started dying, and so we came down from the trees. And
Are you aware of the term Australopithecus?
No.
Wait, is that? I think that's us. Australopithecus. Yeah, I'm fairly certain. I really hope that's not the fucking scientific name for Bigfoot. I really fucking hope. I guess we'll find out after the podcast. Maybe I'll put a thing on screen to say it was or wasn't. Who knows? But Australopithecus is, I think, our evolutionary term before we became Homo erectus, Homo sapien.
If it is the name for Bigfoot, it would still apply to you specifically.
Wow. Low below. Low below.
Is that because your feet are...
I guess. But also, I gotta send you a fucking video. But you never watch the shit I send you, so I don't know whether
I
or not
do. It just takes me like a week to get to it.
they get buried in our conversation and never recovered. But he talks about how he's getting better, I think, as I say that. Australopithecus is, I think, the name of our species before we officially decided to come down out of the trees. If you look at the shoulder bones muscles of apes, especially their pectorals and bicep, tricep area, their arms are oriented more vertically. Their like collarbones are shorter. They're designed to be pulling themselves up and into trees and swinging like this. When we dropped out of the trees and onto the plains of Africa to become hunter-gatherers, you see a distinct difference in our shoulders and how we evolved to be better at throwing things. If you've ever seen a gorilla or an ape try to throw something, they do like they'll throw it over their head and launch it like that because they don't have lateral motor function. They don't have sideways throwing ability. And even kids, it's very evolutionarily easy when we learn how to organize all the muscles into one swift movement. It's very fluid. Like we cock back, pull, and like lean into it and rotate our whole body into a throwing motion. And the idea is that we used stone throwing as a tool for hunting. So like if you've got one monkey throwing rocks at a lion or a zebra or something, it's not gonna turn out well for that one monkey. But if you've got like 10 monkeys throwing rocks at a lion,
pelting a lion,
just fucking like launching sharp, jagged stones at a lion.
Before we had arms like this.
Yeah. And like I can imagine that being pretty effective in a perfect scenario. Girl, get over it, little runt bucket. I will squeeze your bottom.
Does he like having stuff on him? Would I hope to like tuck him in? I'm being like speaking tucked in.
I think he just needs time to get over it. I think this is very interesting because I feel like throwing is very easy for humans. We've evolved to throw things very efficiently.
Children skip rocks.
Pretty much, yeah. Children skip rocks. Basically, well, I'd say a large portion of our professional sports involve high skill, high capacity throwing. Both baseball and football particularly come to mind. But even then, it's a very simple skill that seems that we are evolutionarily geared for it. We have the tools very readily accessible. And I think that's just very interesting. Did we have a fucking topic we were talking about? Or I guess we were talking about stoned ape theory.
And then before that, dietary regulations. And
which I wish I fucking knew more about that kind of shit, but I guess that's why I need to watch more podcasts.
I don't know, the old adage that has been passed to me.
Are you trying to out-fancy me, bro? Say that word again.
Adage. I don't know if that's how you correctly pronounce it for the record.
Adage.
It's A-D-A-G-E. A-D-A-G-E. It's like a mantra, kind of, but like you don't repeat it over and over again, you just live by it.
Oh, you really? Okay, sorry. Continue.
So
I'll stop being
it's basically like my grandma told me to basically just like not necessarily focus on specific things, just like try a wide variety of food and find like a good range of things that you can eat without causing yourself any sort of distress.
I guess as a child, you kind of need your parents to buy that shit for you.
Yeah, but like when I moved in with her last, I was doing my own shopping because I can't eat gluten, so it's pretty much like I could share like one out of every 3 meals with her.
Yeah,
she would incorporate bread in somehow.
Yeah, it's very common and hard to avoid.
And so whenever I would be like, I think I need to eat more of this, she would basically say like, you should try it, but you shouldn't force yourself to
like it.
Not necessarily.
Sorry, I should stop finishing.
Not necessarily like it, but like, just like you shouldn't force yourself to like try so many things that you like aren't eating anything regularly, because like there's some things that like avocados, like if you eat them every single day, massive amounts every day, there might be some issues, but they're relatively healthy, so like
yeah, I would say it's not good to have around.
Yeah, it's not like
wait, so
but basically just like eat what feels right, like trust your body, listen to your body, and don't like.
Okay, so this is what the adage
means.
Basically. Okay, I get what you mean now. I think so. That's kind of the phenomena I was going for when I was talking about monkeys knowing what to eat and what not to eat, and like when you eat plastic, you have negative adage. Is that proper? Is this how it works?
Adage is a type of quote, a type of.
Whatever, man.
It's a saying.
Whatever, man. We're redefining it right here. You heard it first, ladies and gentlemen.
Adage now means dietary.
Dietary feel goods. Well, no. I still want to use the primary aspect of what you were talking about. How you trust your body and kind of, you let your anatomy and your body tell you what is right and what's not.
And a big thing is ignoring commercials. Like
ignoring commercials, man. That's my constant state of being. That's my way of life.
But Hulu Premium.
So there's Hulu and then there's Hulu Premium. God, this is not a commercial for Hulu. I promise. Griff, can you just?
Can I drag him?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Whoa. There's nobody over there, dude. We brought Griffin over to Anthony's house in hopes that he would acclimate within an hour. It's been right at an hour, and actually in 7 seconds, 5 seconds, it'll be an hour. That's good timing. Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
We should record an intro.
We should record an intro. Do you want to do that right now?
This is Toilet Papers and Rocket Ships. My name is Anthony, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Jordan, and I'm also your co-host.
This is
Thank you. Welcome me to the show. Yep. That'd be funny.
Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Oh, so fucking polite, this guy. I'm just getting into the bag of food. Whatever. I don't give a shit. Actually,
this is for you.
Oh, Timothy Leary. Wait, is he a comedian? Is Timothy Leary a comedian?
No, he's.
Why do I know that? Who is that?
He's part of the psychedelic movement. He coined the term "turn on, tune in, zone out."
Cute, bro. Science is all metaphor. Think for yourself and question authority. Women who seek to be equal with men lack ambition. I feel like as a heterosexual white male, I'm not allowed to say that out loud. Civilization is unbearable, but it is less bearable, or it is less unbearable at the top. That's kind of true, dude. I'm working through a book called Anarcho-Syndicalism: Theory and Practice, and the theory of anarchy is developing a social system in which you do not require a state to legislate everything that is good. And so theoretically, you can do away with the state, and anyone who transgresses against the populace has the populace to answer to. And the people essentially uphold the law as they see it.
LaVeyan Satanism, as much of a bad rep as it gets for all of because of its semi-retarded creator, as a non-developmentally disabled person, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but the satanic principles, I feel like those would be, other than the fact that it's so easy to take them kind of unproportionally,
out of context, serious,
too much,
too seriously,
a skull for an eye, you poke out my eye, I'll kill you, they kind of go, it can be the
potential direction.
Satanism itself, no, they word it very vaguely though,
loosely.
So there's a lot, if everyone was to just start obeying the satanic principles and laws of the earth, then there would be chaos. But all of the here, let me look them up because
That was good.
okay, so the 11 satanic rules of the earth are: do not give opinions or advice unless you are asked.
It's kind of the opposite of this podcast. I'm just forcing my opinion on all of you.
But they don't have to click on the video.
That's true.
So if you
So
click on the
that's
video,
asking. That's providing consent.
You're asking for this. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you are sure they want to hear them.
Which is that kind of a repetition of the same principle? Wait, read the first one again. Sorry.
Don't give opinions or advice unless asked.
Oh, okay.
So basically,
okay.
I shouldn't tell.
It's
I shouldn't
similar,
tell you,
but not exactly. So that makes sense.
I shouldn't bitch to you unless I'm sure you want to hear my bitching, and you shouldn't tell me how to live my life
unless you start bitching at me.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes sense.
And then, when in another's lair, show him respect, or else do not go there. So respect me, or get out of my house.
I'm so fucking glad that they used the word lair.
Yeah.
They could have just said house,
Crib.
domicile, bungalow. They could have said anything, but they said lair. Do not invite him to your sanctum. It's so extra. They really lean into that mystique of Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
I think they kind of get off on that.
It was also created in 1969, so the speech is a little
maybe, but not that far off from what it is today.
Number 4 is: if a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy, which means
tell him to shut the fuck up or leave.
That doesn't necessarily just mean a guest. If someone breaks into your house,
sure.
they're immediately breaking your rules, treat them cruelly and without mercy. Do not make sexual advances unless you are given the mating signal.
The mating signal. It's worded in such a way that one doesn't really leave a lot of room to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worded in such a way that when you hear that, you're already kind of thinking from just a baseline logic point of animal-based perspective, the mating signal. It sounds animalistic,
mm-hmm.
but they definitely go for that physique.
Because the main, I don't want to say
one of the main tenets of Satanism is embodiment of your desires in the form of what is called beasthood, beastliness.
Mm-hmm.
You embody how you feel in the moment and use that to be your guide.
But also, they have a lot of rules and things about not being a piece of shit.
Yeah, there's a lot. Actually, I would go on a limb saying like Satanism may have equal or more rules about how not to be a piece of shit, and also Satanism allows you the privilege of treating someone without mercy if they are a piece of shit. So it's like it kind of is a double whammy there. They say don't do it, and then they're telling everyone else like, hey, if they do it, treat them cruelly without mercy.
Like Satanism is basically our current legal system, except
in a way, actually,
like,
in a way,
except
in a way.
with Christian influences. Like,
my dad would not like to hear that. He's no, this is founded by our founding fathers who were steadfast Christians. It's actually not true. They were all Masons, and Masonism, Freemasonry, I think is actually the proper term, is a highly esoteric set of knowledges that, I mean, it's as far removed from a specific religion as astrology is from mainstream science. So
it's not a religious group in that like you have to be their religion.
I think at the bottom it's not a religion/cult, but at the top it very much is a religion/cult.
Well, they're more about knowledge and secrets than they are about, like, of course I don't know this because I'm not a 35th degree Mason, but
yeah,
like to become a Mason you don't have to have a specific religion, you just have to have a religion. You have to have a belief in a higher power.
Which have you? I don't expect the answer to this is yes, but have you dabbled into the book or the audio video I sent you? Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Negative.
You gotta read it, bro. You gotta listen to it. It's gonna be boring as fuck. But when they get to the part about Freemasonry and Druidism, bro, the Druids. Future podcast we're gonna talk about that. So tune in. It's gonna be good. I honestly, that's a good one. I don't want to breach that topic just yet, but oh man, it's a good one.
Here, for this.
I'm not gonna respond to any of the texts I've gotten from my family.
Okay, hey, so the 9 satanic sins, I feel like is something that is very something that should be very much implied.
And also I think it's important to note that the term sin refers to missing the mark. Is the term sin actually, I think, is defined in Hebrew as just missing the mark. When you aim for a goal and you fall short, that's a sin. When you have the goal in mind of being a good person and you fall short, it's a sin. You know, like in Christianity, it's referred to when you have the goal aimed at being a good person. When you have the target placed on virtue and enlightenment and being steadfast in your beliefs, in your faith. And then that's where the target is located. Anything outside of that is a sin. So it depends on where they place the target. And I guess that'll be made clear as what you read there. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the satanic sins, the first one is stupidity. It sounds blunt and rude. I'm not going to go through all of the...
Yeah, when what we already know from the earlier tenets of Satanism being like embodiment of the beast. So if we put being the best possible instrument of your own will, stupidity is most certainly a sin. It misses that mark entirely. If you are stupid, you will not survive, and that's
if you're stupid, if you are stupid, then you cannot
enact your own will.
And also you can't abide by how can you be trusted to abide by the other rules of society?
How can you be trusted? Period. Really.
Yeah. And so you end up depending on people is what that one boils down to. Pretentiousness.
I kind of like that one.
Pretentiousness, like just acting
Thinking
like
you're better than others.
thinking
like,
and then
or
acting
like you're better than others.
acting like you know better than others, like acting like you have the higher knowledge when really like you only know as much as you do. There's no point in talking about how much you know.
Right.
Just discuss the topic and don't say like I know the way. You should listen to me. You should say like, hey, maybe we should
like,
try this.
Don't cut people off in saying like, hey, stop talking, you're stupid. I know better than you. It's like, yeah, none of that shit. I agree with that.
Solipsism.
I don't know what that means.
It's basically, if I remember correctly.
Can I ask Siri to define it real quick? Where the fuck is my phone? I started reaching over here. I just had it. Hey Siri, define solipsism. The view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. Now, that's kind of... that's interesting. That's interesting that that's a sin regarding yourself as being potentially the only unit in the system. Saying, like, I don't know if you guys... / you, Anthony, know much about like simulation theory or rationalism as defined in contrary to empiricism. Rationalism saying like I can achieve knowledge through things other than my senses, like logic, using logic to parse out knowledge, and empiricism saying, hey, that doesn't really work. The only way you can actually gain any kind of truth is by using the data you gain from your senses. The big thing, honestly, probably the reason why rationalism hasn't been tossed to the recycling bin, because I'm eco-friendly, is because the cogito, who was it? René Descartes. He was the big guy who was like, I think therefore I am. He was like, if you try to remember something, your memories could be false. If you have a dream that you're being eaten by a lion, you could believe that you're actually there. But just because your senses are telling you that you're there being eaten by a lion doesn't make it true. Like having to do with the falsifiability of memory and your senses, like you can't always trust them. Have you ever heard a noise? You're like, oh, hey, did somebody just say my name? And everyone's like, no, you're full of shit. Like shit like that happens. You can't always rely on your senses to be absolutely impervious to falsifiability. And so he's saying, but there is one thing you can know for certain, is that if I'm here on the other end of the magnifying glass, so to speak, or to be deceived. If I can be deceived, if I'm here and I can trip over the obstacles, that means that I am something that fundamentally exists. I can't really say anything much further than that, but I can say certainly that I do exist in some sense of the word.
So
I think
basically, what this is saying isn't that solipsism is, or like the consciousness aspect of solipsism is negative, because this is like the entirety of Satanism is more about how you should interact with other people and animals. One of the 11 satanic rules of the earth is don't hurt non-human animals unless you are being attacked or unless you need food.
Yeah.
Like, it's just telling you how you should interact with people. What you do in your own time, how you think, that's your own business. But as long as you... when they say solipsism, they basically mean, like, don't project your reactions, don't project your... don't walk into a room and say, hey, do you want to do this? And then assume that the person wants to do it because you want to do it.
That brings up an interesting concept, and I'll talk about this before I read this because theory of mind is something that separates us from most other intelligent creatures. Theory of mind. Have you ever been a kid and you were like, shit, I really want to go to the zoo. Fuck, there's nothing I can think about more than wanting to go to the zoo. And you're like tugging on your mom's arm like, bro, take me to the zoo. Take me to the zoo. That's all I want to do. I want to go to the zoo. And your mom's like, dude, I don't want to go to the zoo. And you're like, how could you not want to go to the zoo? Like, what the fuck? How does that make any sense? Theory of mind says basically other people's brains have other shit in them. So if you are something that possesses theory of mind, it means that you are capable of comprehending that there's something other than your own cognition going on in other people's brains. Like when you want to go to the zoo, you can understand, hey, maybe it's possible other people don't want to go to the zoo. Like, it makes sense to think that way. And so I guess this kind of relates. Solipsism, the way it initially like hit my brain was that the belief or the theory or view that your own self is the only thing that exists. The reason that related to rationalism is because, like, if you are saying, fuck, I don't know what my senses are telling me, you could be an illusion, for all I know. You could be a simulation. And I could... It's not entirely out of the question to think that I could be the only thing that exists. Theoretically. I mean, it's possible to think that, and it's not entirely logically unsound. Though, it doesn't make much sense practically. To think that way, like you are the only thing that matters, and putting your own wants and desires above and before anyone or anything else, and simply saying, like, if you see human suffering going on, or even animal suffering, and saying, they're probably just illusions anyway, why do I give a fuck? That can make sense as to why that's a sin. But it's also sort of counterintuitive from the I guess the mainstream view. When you go to like a crowded street corner and you say, hey, what do you think about Satanism? Somebody's like, oh shit, fuck that. It's, it sounds like they only give a fuck about themselves. That's probably like when you say the word anarchy, they mean, that's synonymous with chaos. Like, Satanism is synonymous with selfishness, but this is saying is that that's not actually true, and that, solipsism is a sin because you have to consider all of the other units in the system, all the other factors in the equation. So that, I guess, makes sense in your thumb.
Another thing is on the zoo thing that you were saying.
Yeah.
I remember a long time ago we had watched one of us had watched a video and then sent it to the other, and it was a bunch of 3-year-olds, I think, being tested, and they had an adult in front of them that they weren't familiar with, or maybe their parent, and there was 2 foods. One was cookies, and the other was I don't know, something that didn't taste as good, just crackers, or or maybe one was cereal and the other was a bowl of peas.
Mm-hmm.
And the adult would eat one of the cookies and go, ugh, gross. And then they would take a bite of the peas or whatever and be like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And then they would offer them to the kid, and the kid would try them both and then be like, I want the cookies.
It would mimic the reaction of the adult. No?
They would taste the cookies and be like, this is good. And then they would taste the peas and be like, oh, I don't dig this. And then the adult would be like, can you feed me some? And the kid would feed the adult cookies because that's what they thought the adult. That's because they were projecting their own desires onto the adults.
I want to say maybe this was in one of the explained episodes, maybe.
I remember we watched it on YouTube years ago, but it might have been
they might have thrown something
included.
Yeah, they might have thrown another tidbit in with that. And I think that's exactly kind of what I was trying to illustrate with the theory of mind thing with the zoo. When you I think they also did something where, I think I heard about this in one of the podcasts that I listened to. There's no way I could actually fucking dig it back up. But the thing was that when you give, there's like a puzzle box. It's very, very simple. They put something valuable like food in the box, and then they like lock it in such a way that there's just like a bar that's keeping it, or there's like a very simple mechanism. You just pull the chain out and then you can open the box or something like that. But they would do it, I think they did this with like monkeys, like chimpanzees, I think, and human children. And they would, the adult would take the box, they would open it, show the kid what's inside, they would lock it in such a way, and then they would throw in an extra step, like tapping the sides of the box beforehand, and then they would do the mechanism to open it. And I think what they found was that monkeys didn't give a shit what the humans did that was extra. They just pulled the chain out, opened it up, got the food. But human children would be like, oh, there must have been some reason that the adult did those things, and they would repeat their extra actions for no reason. For no reason that they could see, but they would repeat those actions thinking that the adult had to have had a reason to do them, so they just repeat. I can't remember exactly what the moral of that story was, but I think humans, we tend to prefer the wisdom of others as long as it doesn't come off condescending.
That makes sense.
I think we tend to, if we see someone who we know is more capable than us, like if you saw an Olympic medal ski slope skier do some weird thing before he went down a slope, and you are like, fuck, I've never skied in my life, maybe I should do that too, just for like he puts butter in his gloves or something, you know, you'd be like, maybe there's some fucking truth to it, who knows. You'd be more inclined to think of it, whereas like if it's not intuitive, you'd be like the monkey,
mm-hmm.
saying like, I'm not gonna follow that, doesn't make any sense, I'm not even paying attention really. And I feel like I'm not doing this justice. I want to go back and fucking read more about this experiment. Also, it's 8:30 right now.
What time do you need to be?
I'm trying to be in bed by 9.
Damn.
I know, fuck.
I was just about to ask if you want pizza.
Bro, I know. We're an hour and a half into this. I wish we could just keep talking. I guess let's wrap it up. Fucking. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you all for watching. Tune in next time to Toilet Paper and Rocket Ships for your daily dose of
bi-weekly dose.
Yeah, whatever. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, whatever.
I had a really fucking basic bitch idea on the way here. I was following a car that had a license plate that said Carvana, and then I was like, dude, a lot of things are just doing the suffix Vana. I was like, oh, it's so hashtag woke. It's so, I mean, I wouldn't actually do it. I'd kill myself before I named the podcast Cast Vana or some shit. But it's like T-Vana, Carvana. It's just so stupid. But I was also thinking, I really like the name Toilet Paper and Rocket Ships, just because it kind of gives a good indication of what I want to do. It's going to be like one part nonsense and fuckery, and one part intergalactic fucking train wreck. I also like, I think in high school when people were telling me, oh man, you should start a podcast, I was thinking I should name it Enchanted Public Transit, like a play off of the Magic School Bus. Because I also have an iguana, and potentially that we can just throw them up in the back during our conversations. It could be funny. But yeah, I don't know. And also, I was thinking about pulling from the fucking list of names for the book. I also was thinking just name the podcast The Book of 10,000 Names. That could be, a bit interesting. I really like the incense you're burning. It smells fantastic.
It is Sacred Ritual from the same company that we get the Nog Champa from.
It smells kind of Nog Champa-esque.
And I just like it.
What a dirtbag.
It's a derby. There's a cat.
Yeah, good effort.
I like that you can just
Just munch on his butt sometimes. I was also kind of thinking of naming the podcast something really stupid. So there's only 3 topics that I feel like I really know well. Hey, get Nadim behind you. Get Nadim. Being a fucking dirtbag. There's only 3 topics that I feel like I really know pretty well enough to like keep up with the leading experts on, and that's physics, philosophy, and psychedelics. And it'd be triple P. Interesting enough to note that none of those words actually make the p sound. Physics, philosophy, and psychedelics. None of them.
They're all PHs.
Yeah, or psychedelics. Yeah, but anyway, it's interesting, and like name it triple P, and then have it like not. It wouldn't make any sense because I would spell it. I'd spell it wrong intentionally. It would be interesting.
TP. Triple P.
TP like toilet paper.
Toilet paper. Triple P.
Triple P and rocket ships. How do we make the analogy?
RP.
Rocket ships. RS. Oh, I was also thinking triple P could stand for pain, perseverance, and what was it? What was the last one? It was like victory or something. I don't know.
Victory.
I don't remember what it was. Pain, perseverance, and I don't remember. I thought of it and I was like, oh, I'm so fucking clever.